And then they presented the results, like UCLA's kind of self-service data analytics tool. So a lot of great presentations over the last couple of days. And for us at Memorial Hermann, the clinical care redesign is kind of that same paradigm or focus that you've heard over the last couple of days of different hospitals and hospital systems identifying opportunities and then how they group that work out to show improvement over time and engaging physicians. And so that's what we'll talk to you today specifically for our academic flagship hospital and specifically for the Neurosciences program. So 27% reduction in our Vizient length of stay ODE ratio. And if you had the opportunity to hear Steve Muir talk yesterday, or any of your clinical care database coordinators had a chance to hear him talk, we heard him say that length of stay reductions was key during all his time visiting hospitals and working with hospitals. The top performers consistently had lower length of stay, and then you would see a kind of halo effect in terms of cost, quality, safety, mortality, etc. So we're very excited about all of our efforts over the last 2 years, bringing our ODE ratio down by 27%. And the key takeaways that we want to share with you is really physician engagement and empowerment. And Rahul is going to talk to you about the specific concrete examples that we use to work with our physicians to engage them to use the data through root cause analysis and EMR enhancements. So I'll hand it off to Rahul.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you all for being here and giving us an opportunity to present our work. Clinical care redesign domain, we actually, from a neurosciences perspective, use a platform to integrate clinical practice and operational processes and use Vizient data to drive change. It includes these 4 domains, and I'll talk about some of the specific efforts we put forth relative to each one of them. The care variation aims to reduce unnecessary clinical practice, and really the driving force here is for us to find opportunities where we can standardize care. And what we believe the most important factor to achieve success in this area is physician engagement. Our operational and clinical leaders have seen and worked with Vizient data for over 10 years at the medical center. However, it's only recently that we've actually reported physician-specific data. And it's reported at a grand rounds, unblinded, so everybody can see their peers' data. And as you can imagine, it stirred a lot of conversation. Physician empowerment, it's not putting a number on a slide or putting a set of numbers on a slide and reporting performance. We really had to put time and effort working with our physicians, helping them understand what these data mean, where are they coming from, how are these things calculated, what are the key variables impacting the expected values that they're seeing. What does it mean when we say observed to expected ratio? We also spend a lot of time educating them risk model, the Vizient risk models and the methodology and the benchmarking, and actually being able to use the Vizient analytical tools to compare ourselves with our peers across the nation. And that was really, that is what drove the message home for them. I can see how I perform compared to a neurosurgeon at Mayo or UPenn, and really implementing the best practices from all those areas to help drive the physician engagement process. Initial steps towards helping our physicians understand these data was to correlate it with the cases that they're actually involved in. We implemented a system-wide clinical case review program, and the focus of this program is towards accurate care delivery and incidence of adverse events, mortality, length of stay. Cost, however, was not a primary objective. Obviously, we're engaging our clinicians. They don't care about cost. What they care about is how can I better care about my patients. But the change in cost is a byproduct of all the work that surrounded providing efficient care delivery. Integration of Vizient case profiles. This is actually the format that we use, and I'll give an example on the next slide. But the Vizient case profile actually summarizes for us the key elements that impact the risk of mortality and observed to expected ratio. An example of that is, let's look at this. In this particular case, on the very top row, this encounter started with a clinic referral for an elective admission. Patient's discharge status is rehab. At this point, I'm already starting to think, why is this patient coming from home for elective surgery go to rehab? The Vizian case profile also tells us the service line. It was a spine surgery service line that the patient fell under, with a DRG of 519, which will direct us to which model the patient was under. The values to note here: length of stay observed from 8 days and length of stay expected of 4 days. A red flag for us to look at any clinical or operational events that may contribute to that extended length of stay. It also lists the ICD-10 diagnosis codes for that encounter, identifying them as either resident admission or not, as well as the complications. In this case, happens to be aspiration pneumonia. So one slide, and we can say this was an elective admission. Patient came in with lumbar stenosis with radiculopathy, having a past medical history of hypertension, chronic AFib, morbid obesity. Patient was also diagnosed with VTEC during the hospitalization, which was not present on admission, and a complication of aspiration pneumonia, going to discharge to rehab. Now, this Vizian case profile is guiding me to ask targeted questions surrounding what happened with this encounter. Was the patient medically optimized for spine surgery? Did they go through the appropriate preoperative clearance? Did they receive the appropriate post-anesthesia management? Were there any operational delays in rehab placement? So this is the format that we use the clinical case reviews for. And this drives the discussions surrounding where are the gaps in our clinical care? Where are the gaps in our operational processes? Where is the opportunity where we can standardize care? And that brings me to actually developing and implementing specific clinical protocols and guidelines to help fill those gaps. External ventricular drains, or EVD placements, for example, working directly with the physicians who are putting these drains into patients. How the borehole is placed. At what angle does it need to be so we have an optimum reach to the ventricles? How is the drain secured and externalized from the cranial cavity? How is it connected to the CSF apparatus, CSF collection apparatus? All those things go into standardizing how this procedure is done, minimizing complications from it. Not only that, we developed a training module for our residents. They have to actually place a certain number of EVD, supervised EVD, without complications before they're actually considered proficient in this procedure. There are training modules for our nursing staff for EVD bedside management. And all of this is to minimize complications, keeping our focus on patient safety, quality of care. I can go through other examples with anybody that have any specific questions after. But essentially, the goal of care variation, minimizing it, development of standardization of care, focusing on service excellence, quality of care, patient safety, and ultimately the patient experience. The care progression domain focuses on developing proactive care plans and making sure that we identify the appropriate post-acute care needs. And we used our case review forums in looking at the patients with Vizian length of stay of observed expected ratio greater than 1.0. We have our clinicians in these meetings, as well as our operational leaders, to help bridge that gap between what is happening from the clinical side and what we need to do operationally to help move the process along. Two important points to make on this slide is, one, asking our physicians to make early decisions surrounding what is the best care the patient needs after they're going to be ready to go home or rehab. And two, engaging our patients and their family members early in the process, setting the right expectations, addressing any concerns that they have early in the process. That way, there are no delays at the time of the actual discharge. For ourselves, to hold ourselves accountable, we actually developed our operational metrics. Discharge by noon is a physician metric, asking our physicians to put in discharge orders before noon for patients who are routinely discharged home. The patients who are going home, they don't need any additional authorization. This is a process that we can internally control and impact. That's not to say that we asked the physicians put an order before noon and it happened. When we actually introduced this, it was an uproar. Like, it's absolutely not possible for us to do this. And 3 years after this, every single physician on the neurosurgery service is actually meeting this metric, 100%. Time lapse to bed turnover. This is a nursing metric looking at how long does it take for the nursing staff to actually move the patient and make the bed available for the next intake. And again, I mean, Nicole Harrison is here, she can probably attest to it. It's a lot of effort to actually make that happen. Bringing the number down from being over 3 hours to now being close to 90 minutes. We also established a hospitality lounge, and this was really to address the concerns around transportation. Patients just waiting around for a ride, and we can't move them. So that allowed us to actually complete our discharge process, move the patients from the unit to a hospitality lounge. And that didn't actually compromise the patient experience because the lounge offers them comfortable recliners, they have snacks, they have an iPad for entertainment, so they don't feel like they got kicked out. It may in fact actually enhance their experience. The clinical documentation domain, and a lot of everybody here have talked about it all day long. How do we have the accurate clinical documentation using the right medical terminology, which is codable, reflecting the true severity of illness? And that's the goal here. And in order for us to kind of supplement that and facilitate that, we implemented specific enhancements in our EMR system, adding quick pick lists for our physicians. These quick pick lists are based on the high impact variables in the Bayesian risk models. And they're available for the physicians within the EMR clinical documentation interface. They can click add, and it's tied to an ICD-10 code in the back, and it's part of the clinical documentation. For example, a patient comes in, subarachnoid hemorrhage or ruptured aneurysm. The suggested associated diagnoses are cerebral edema or hydrocephalus or intraventricular hemorrhage. Physician doesn't have to go and search for those things in the diagnosis wizard. They have it right there within the clinical documentation interface. They can click add, and it's part of it. We also collaborate with our clinical documentation integrity team, and they play a vital role as a checkpoint for us. They use the existing EMR system to send queries to the physicians about documentation and diagnoses that need further justification. And this is happening while the patient is still in the hospital. So by the time the encounter actually comes to an end, we have validated the documentation, we have validated the diagnoses that are in the system. The case management domain is really focused around optimizing coordination of care when it comes to discharge planning. And multidisciplinary discharge rounding is a big factor where we can have clinicians, nursing staff, case management, social worker, everybody present at the same time talking about what the patient's needs are with regards to discharge. Having open communication so everybody's on the same page, as well as making sure that the patient is receiving consistent message about what the plan of care is. Again, cannot emphasize how important it is for us to engage our patients and their caregivers early in the process, setting the right expectations about what type of care they would need once they leave the hospital, and preparing them for that. Even if they're going home, and if the family needs some training, we can do those things early in the process. That way, when we're actually ready to discharge the patient, we have minimized those barriers. Case management also includes building relationships with your palliative care service, your rehab facilities, whether it's inpatient or outpatient, your SNFs, to make sure that we're picking the right facility. We're going through and initiating the process early enough to where we can minimize the denials, and they're minimizing barriers to disposition. So using these domains in the clinical care redesign really has guided our work to the focus on patient safety, making sure there's efficient, optimized care coordination, excellent service, and patient experience. And I'll invite Miriam back to now present some of the fruits of our labor.
Thank you, Rahel. So that was the outline of our process, the way that we engaged our physicians. And Rahel was there, and it was in every single one of those interactions. And what he alluded to in terms of the root cause analysis, but not just at TMC, but for all of our neurosurgeons and neurology across the entire organization, across all 10 hospitals, going out there and interacting with the physicians at the respective locations, going through those case profiles with them. And over the last couple of years, seeing a 27% reduction in our length of stay ODE ratio. for neurosciences, which is including neurology and neurosurgery. And you'll see in tandem, neurosurgery and neurology both sharing those same kind of huge gains over time. And when we look at on what side of the coin is that on the observed side or is it on the expected side? So you'll see observed length of stay went down.